In a previous video, we've managed to display the list of records with the titles, with authors, with year, price, and category. In this video, we are going to cover cover types available in and languages. Let's go back to our editor. As I mentioned earlier, the remaining three methods, which will take care of these three items, will be exactly same as the method, if we go back to the model book, as this author's book. So what we might do is to extract this logic into a separate method. Let's have a look at, first of all, what our methods will actually look. Let's have a look at the languages first. So public function languages, and again, it takes joint. By default, it's going to be comma and a space, and it will return this sort implode, and then we would have explode again using the comma, explode this languages property, and then use the joint. So as you can see, if I just scroll up, this is exactly the same thing that we have in the authors. The only thing that is different is just the property that we're passing through to this explode method. So why not have it in a separate method and then just call this method with only two arguments? Okay, I'm going to cut all this, and after this sort implode, create a new private function because we don't need to use it outside of this class. So private method called group concat, I'm going to call it, and it will take a string as first argument and then joint as second, and again by default it's going to be a comma and a space. And I'm going to paste all this to this method, and now replace these languages with the string. And now let's add some doc blocks here. We are going to say it's going to be string. It's also going to be a string, and it's going to say get string of items concatenated with joint. Okay, so this is the method that we can now use from within all of these lookup records. So what I'm going to do here is remove all this and return this group concat. First of all, what I want to split and concat, which is going to be author's property, and then joint as the second one. Looks a little bit cleaner, and if we need to at any time change the logic behind the scenes, obviously we can only just go to the single method and do it from here. Okay, the same thing goes for these languages. So we return this group concat, this time languages property and joint, and that's this method done. So if we now just add the doc blocks for languages, get languages separated by joint. Separated or concatenated rather. What do we have here? We have separate as well. Let's change it to concatenated with joint rather than separated. Okay. Languages, let's create all these methods actually, and then we're going to write tests for them. So we have languages, public function, locations as well. Again, joint as an argument, and return this group concat, and this time we're passing locations property, and then joint as a second argument. Let's add doc blocks. And it's going to say get locations concatenated by joint. Concatenated by or with joint. I mean, it's entirely up to you what you're going to put here. Right? Okay, next one, public function covers. And again, joint. And return this group concat. This time we're looking at the covers property and joint. And then doc blocks, get covers concatenated by joint. Okay, and that's all the methods within the book class. Let's now go back to our book test. Actually, before we do this, let's actually run the test and see that everything still works within the book test. And it does. So obviously, as you can see, this change that we didn't affect anything. But it's a little bit cleaner now. We have one method that we call from within all of these methods. We only pass property and then the joint, and it works just great. Okay, let's go back to our book test. And what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this entire test, actually, duplicate it. And I'm going to rename it. We are starting with, we have languages after author. So let's start with languages. Returns concatenated list of associated languages. Languages. Let me just close this file browser on the left. Scroll up. So we're creating, rather than author, we're creating a language now. Language. And let's import this class here. Create name. Let's do English. And then another language. This time it's going to be French, for instance. And rather than author one, we're going to replace it with language one. Actually, let's call it what it actually is, English. And then for the second one, we're going to have French. And rather than author book, this time we need to have a model for the joint between the language and the book. So let's create this model here quickly. It's going to be book language, because B is before L. That's how we put these classes together. So book language, and no, and this one as well. And again, we're going to extend model. And this one will also have protected property table, which will be book language. So we can now close, save and close the file. Now replace this author book with book language. Language, and let's import this class as well. And obviously when I'm importing, if I just scroll right to the top, you'll see obviously the use statement is being added right above the class definition. Let's just organize these things a little bit better. So, like this, there we go. Now we can scroll right to the bottom, back to our test. So now we have book language. Let's replace this author book variable with book language, and rather than author ID, we're going to have language ID, and it's going to be English for the first one, French for the second one, and again for this one as well, language ID field in a database. And then we fetch in this book again, exactly same way as before, but rather than having these names here, we're going to have these languages. So English, comma, space, French for the first test, invalid language formatting, and the same thing for the second assertion. And again, this one is going to be English with the pipe and French then, because we're concatenating with the pipe now. And rather than authors method, obviously we are calling languages method here on this book instance. So that's what it is. Okay, so let's test these languages. Let's test this entire class. And there we go. We've got 10 tests. Obviously, this new test for the languages has been added, and 2 assertions there extra as well from the previous test. So 7 assertions, all of which are passing. Let's again duplicate now these languages. And we are going to do the same for the locations. So rather than languages, it's going to be locations. So returns concatenated list of associated locations. Rather than language, now we're going to have a location class. And again, let's import it. And we're going for both here and here. And the location, now let's do London, for instance, and this one will be Paris. And rather than English, it's going to be London. And rather than French, it's going to be Paris variable. And now rather than book language, it's going to be book location. So another joint model, book location. Same thing as before. Let's first extend model. And then protected table. It's going to be book location. Let's add dog blocks, string. I'm not sure if I added dog blocks here. I didn't. So let's quickly do this as well. it's a string. These lookup tables, if you unsure where they're coming from, if you open a database, sorry, not database, it was within the migration model queries, and then whichever one you're going to open, you can see we have this join tables, book language table, then we have book location, and so on. All these join tables that we are using. So we basically specifying which table this specific class is referring to. So we have book language, book location, and we're using book location now because we're testing for the location. So book location. Let's import this class as well. And rather than book language, let's rename this variable with book location. And rather than language ID, this time it's going to be location ID. And obviously these variables have already been renamed, so they're referring correctly. And now obviously here, rather than English, French, we're going to have London, Paris, if we don't pass any argument to the method called locations rather than languages this time. And if we pass the pipe symbol, we're going to have London concatenated, London concatenated with Paris with a pipe in between. And rather than language, it's going invalid location formatting, invalid location formatting. If we save it, preview, if we run a test, we can see we have 11 tests now, 2 extra assertions again, all of which are passing. So our locations method are also working fine. Let's do the same thing for the covers now. The last test we are going to be writing here. So locations are going to be replaced with covers. So returns concatenated list of associated covers. We add in the book. Now we are after cover class. So cover, let's import it and let's replace this one here as well. And the covers will be hard and soft. So let's rename the variables. Hard, and name is going to be hard, and then Paris is going to now become soft and soft cover. And now rather than book locations, is now we're going to have book cover. So let's add this class to our models directory, book cover, and again extending model and protected table book cover. And that's all for this one. Let's add this dog block as well. Save it. Now we have it available. Let's just import this class straight away. Rather than book location, it's going to be book cover. And rather than location ID, it's going to be cover ID. And then assert equals is going to be hard with soft. And rather than locations method is going to be covers. And then invalid cover formatting. Same here, and obviously assertion for this covers concatenated with the pipe needs to be hard as well with soft. And if we save it, run a test, now we have 12 tests, 21 assertions, all of which are passing. So now our book class has all associated tests with all the new methods, all of the new methods. Let's now save it and close the book test, save and close a book model. And we can go back to our index.php. I'm going to close the file browser here so we can expand these lines a little bit more. So we have year, author, we going for cover types now. So after the strong echo book covers method, and again, we're going to leave it with default comma and a space, open the browser, and there we go. All these are now displayed correctly. As you can see, this last one has hard and soft cover, so there are 2 versions of the book. Then for available in, we are going to have locations, so echo book locations. And let's quickly do these languages as well. Echo book languages. Save it, preview it in the browser, and there we go. and all of the items are now displaying correctly. And obviously, if you are not happy with comma and space, you can change it at any time by just passing the arguments to any of these methods that we've just created. So you can see, we can see available in the multiple towns, multiple languages, and so on. So I think that's everything for this video. Let's move to the next one.